Today on the newscast, the skies above Damascus lit up late last night with a major Israeli airstrike against Iranian targets. Plus, the Israel Defense Forces conducting another major military drill along that Lebanon border, preparing for Hezbollah. Get all the breaking details coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. Yet another series of major Israeli airstrikes against Iranian targets inside Syria late last night. Now, according to Syrian opposition sources, at least 9 pro-Iran militia fighters were killed in the strikes, which targeted Damascus International Airport and also the suburbs outside of Damascus. And the specific targets were Iranian weapons shipments and reportedly Iranian espionage equipments. Now, there was a flight that flew from Damascus to Tehran on Saturday. It's believed that these were weapon shipments in this flight, so that may have been the target of the Israel Defense Forces in these strikes. Some more specifics from the Jerusalem Post, quoting, I'll just read it right here off my phone. I want to get the details correct for you. Quoting the Syrian Capital Voice website, which reported that Iranian forces were using shipping containers belonging to the United Nations and DHL, very interesting nugget there, to store weapons near the Damascus International Airport. According to the report in the Syrian Capital Voice, weapons are stored in the containers for a few days after arriving in Syria before being transferred to other locations. There are over 25 containers being used by Iran to store weapons near the airport. Were these containers the target of these IDF strikes late last night, overnight? Very good question. Damascus International Airport, folks, has been a continuous target for the IDF because of what we just talked about, right? These continued weapons shipments coming from Tehran, the Iranian capital, to Damascus, the Syrian capital, and then they are passed off, these shipments, into the hands of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and in Syria, and into the hands of these various pro-Iran terror militias which are operating in Syria right near Israel's border. So Israel is taking preemptive action with these strikes. Last night's strikes were the 6th in the past 2 months alone. We've been documenting all of these major strikes, these wars and rumors of wars that are unfolding right now. We've been documenting them for you here on a practically daily basis at the Watchman Newscast. Just check out our archives and you will see these strikes by the IDF. And by the way, the Israel Defense Forces never claims credit or responsibility for these strikes. Very rarely do they claim responsibility, and they did not last night. They had no comment. But these strikes against Iranian assets have taken place really across a broad range of Syria, southern Syria, western Syria, near the Golan Heights, and in eastern Syria, which brings up a very interesting point. The strikes overnight followed strikes last Thursday. I believe that was February 10th. Also, these were not late night strikes. These were rare daylight strikes on Thursday, February 10th, in eastern Syria, right along that Syria-Iraq border. Interesting nugget to mention about that strike last Thursday, February 10th, that daylight strike, again, very rare. This strike was apparently carried out against an Iranian weapons convoy, once again crossing from Iraq into Syria, by drones. So we've been talking a lot about these drone wars, right, here in the newscast, where Israel carrying out drone strikes, Iran attempting to carry out drone strikes, but also carrying out drone tests. Hundreds of drones, Iranian-made drones. They had a major drill last month showcasing their drone arsenal, did the Iranian regime. They are supplying these drones to Hezbollah, to the Houthis in Yemen, to the radical Shia militias in Iraq, and all of their allies around the region. So that was interesting to me that this strike last Thursday was reportedly carried out by a drone, which leads us to, we had all the action late last night. Also, more action. Israel, shortly after these strikes around Damascus International Airport, announced a surprise military drill. Folks, it's going on right now. It will end on Wednesday, February 17th. It began late last night, almost simultaneously with these strikes in Syria. Shortly thereafter, the operation is called Galilee Rose. It is an Israeli Air Force operation. It comes on the heels of a major Israeli military drill just a week ago. We documented it here less than a week ago. We talked about it here on the newscast last week. Also along the Lebanon border. Galilee Rose, this exercise right now taking place up north along the Lebanon border, simulating war with Hezbollah. Last week's drill did exactly the same. Now, the drill last week involved air, sea, and land forces, the Israeli police, Israeli intelligence, the Israeli cyber division. This Galilee Rose drill taking place right now reportedly involves only the Israeli Air Force. Very interesting. You're going to see Israeli helicopters, drones, and fighter jets involved in this drill, and the IDF has already told the residents of northern Israel that they can expect explosions and loud noises and troop movements over the next few days as this drill unfolds. And clearly this drill is sending a message once again to Iran and Hezbollah that the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, are prepared for any contingency. What are the big takeaways here? I'm sorry. I think number one, things are heating up. Surprise, surprise. We've been telling you here at the newscast that the Middle East right now is a tinderbox. Even the slightest incident, the slightest provocation could set things off and spark a major, major conflict, the kind that the IDF is preparing for right now. That great northern war we've been telling you about, right? That is coming. It's a question not of if, but when, with Israel facing off against Hezbollah and Iran and those various Iranian allies to the north. That's exactly what these drills are preparing for. Israel is well aware that that day is coming. They don't welcome it, but they know that day is coming. Folks, not only do we have the airstrikes, we also have major military drills, not only Israel carrying them out, but Israel's enemies, Iran, Hamas, showing off their military hardware and flexing their muscles as well. Then we've had several incidents. Look, a few weeks back, we had the Israeli embassy in New Delhi, India, targeted. Thankfully, no one was injured. Iran's fingerprints were probably on that. We also have reports of Iran scouting out the Israeli and UAE embassies in Ethiopia. Why would they target these embassies around the world? Simple. They are looking for revenge for the death of their nuclear weapons mastermind, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. They blame Israel for his death, and they are seeking revenge, not only for Fakhrizadeh, but also still for Qasem Soleimani, the terror master who was taken out early last year. So that has ratcheted everything up to a new level. The Biden administration looking to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal, which would be a disaster. And the Israeli Defense Forces Chief of Staff, just 2 weeks ago, Aviv Kohavi, saying, don't do it, telling the Biden administration, don't do it. Oh, and by the way, we are drawing up plans this year for a possible military strike against Iran's nuclear weapons facilities. So all of this is going on, folks, and it's hard to keep track. There's so much happening, but that's why we do what we do here at the Watchman Newscast. Now, Monday through Friday, every day, bringing you the kind of cutting-edge, timely information and analysis that you just won't hear anywhere else, certainly not in the mainstream media. Hey, one last thing I'd love your comments on. We're talking a lot about these strikes against Damascus. The book of Isaiah, chapter 17, says that Damascus, a stunning prophecy regarding Damascus, Damascus will become a ruinous heap. It will cease to be a city. Now, many people in our comments have mentioned this. Damascus, to my knowledge, has never been completely destroyed. Even the Mongols, who were vicious destroyers, did not raze Damascus to the ground. It's just about the world's oldest inhabited city, continuously inhabited, going back thousands of years. But Isaiah 17 seems to predict a quite different outcome. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Hey, stay tuned tomorrow for more from the Watchman Newscast. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never, hold your peace.